Hello folks, welcome to Canal Channel Jose. Today we're going to give you an idea on how we are hanging our pictures or things like this on the bathroom on the drywall. One thing that we noticed that those anchors that you just make puncture a hole into it and you just push them in, as you put weight into it, they pulled out. So you gotta use some anchors that they actually stay in there and they hold weight. So we're using this, we're gonna put this towel hanger, which is a couple hooks, 5 hooks, and a piece of wood, and it has 2 points of hanging points on the wall. So we already have put one anchor for a starting point. We already decided the height and then where about is gonna be on this wall. So we're gonna show you the anchors that we're using. We've been using, and we recommend this easy anchors. They're drywall. They can hold up to 75 pounds, and the reason that they are like this is because they drill themselves into the drywall. Once they're in the drywall, you put the screw and they split on the front as well, so they make more anchor point. So that's how they look. They look like a big threaded plastic screw, and then you have the part where you can screw them into the wall and the drywall, and then that same opening you can put the screw that is going to be the actual holding point for your picture or your whatever you need to hang. We bought a box, so we're gonna show you how we do it. And we had really good experience with these anchors because they don't just come off or they don't start loosening up where you can feel play, because these are big screws, plastic screws made for this sheetrock. So what we have done is that we put our hanging point for our towels. We decided the height and where it's gonna be. From that starting point, we're gonna have to level and find the level point where the other screw or anchor point is going to be at the other end. You got to measure the width, you got to measure the distance between the 2 anchor points and your picture or your hanging point if it has 2 points, and then level it, make a mark. We have measured the width from one anchor point to the other anchor point, so we have measured how far apart they need to be. And then once you do that, and then you're gonna use your anchor that you have put on as your point of reference to start. So you put it right in the middle, and then you go over here. Once you get the right level, you go over here and you make a mark right at when you had the width. Now you make a mark, so you should end up with a cross, a small cross, telling you that's the center of your next anchor point. So that way you're level and you have the right width. So now we're gonna put our anchor, and then we put our screws. Okay folks, so at this point we're about to put our anchor, and these anchors have a drill shape pointing end, but what I like to do is I use a screwdriver because they're harder, so I don't bend or hurt myself trying to drill it in. So they're pretty sturdy, but I like to use a screwdriver because it's solid. So I'm gonna drill a little bit or just make a puncture through, and then once I get a hole, I'm gonna put the anchor and then screw it on to the sheetrock, so we can put our screws and hang our hooks. Okay folks, so we have put our anchor points, so now we're gonna put the screws that go inside the anchor points that they're made with. So once you screw them on, you screw them as much as you need, and then you're gonna have to leave some space for your hooks to hook on, or the pictures. So these you can screw them in as much as you need. I will give them about 5 threads in to start, and then depends on what you need, because you don't want just to barely put it on, because then the screw is gonna rip off the plastic. So okay folks, so we have our screws. We have just enough depth or enough space between the wall or the sheetrock and the screw, so we can hook our hooks into it. So what we do is we hook them on, and then we should be almost done. What I like about these anchors, what I was saying, is that once you put them on, you screw them on, and then you put the screw in. Well, these anchors, they don't just pop in. You gotta screw them in into the sheetrock. So that's one benefit of it. And then once you put the screw on, that anchor expands. So that's another. So it tightens itself more into the sheetrock. So it's really hard to pull it off. You almost have to unscrew it to rip it out of the wall. So they're not just pop in. That's one benefit. These anchors are really good for these kind of jobs, especially when you're hanging 75 pounds like they tend to say it on the box. Don't recommend it for TVs, just recommend it for pictures and things like that. So let's put our hooks on. Good. This is how the anchor for the sheetrock looks like, and these are they can drill their own holes into the sheetrock, and as you drill in it, and it gets to the threads, and it starts screwing itself in as you spin it with the Phillips screwdriver. Once it gets flush, then it has this cracked or opening in the middle on both sides, as you can see. So you feed the screw into it, and as you're tightening, this cracks, splits in half, and these makes more pressure into the sheetrock so it won't come out. So we'll show you how that goes outside, but when it would be in the sheetrock. As you can see, you screw on the anchor. Once you screw the screw into the anchor, this anchor actually makes more pressure and splits open. So that's a really tough point at the sheetrock. So this is why we recommend these anchors. So here, folks, you can see the before and after. This is before the screw has been screwed into the anchor, and this is after, once the anchor was on the sheetrock and the screw was screwed into the sheetrock anchor. This is what it looks before and after. Well, folks, this was a video of an idea how you can hang pictures or stuff in the on walls with drywall. And one thing I want to throw out there is that I remember that there's studs or ply or wood behind the sheetrock, so you gotta make sure where you're gonna drill or make the puncture for your anchor, because if you make a puncture and the screw it doesn't go through, then you're gonna have an extra hole in there. So you gotta make sure you gotta find your stud in there. So these anchors are made for there are two pieces to it. So there's the anchor point, and then there's the screw. And remember, don't use bigger or smaller screws, because then it won't work correctly. Use the design or the ones that came with it, so you get really good results. So with that said, if you like it, give us thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here on el canal El Chano Jose.